There is a kind of love that doesn't demand recognition or reciprocation. It is the love that runs into flames without hesitation, asking nothing in return except the sacred privilege of knowing that person exists in the world. The steady beep of the heart monitor was the only sound in the sterile hospital room. Anderson Pierce sat hunched in the chair beside Cynthia's bed, his expensive suit rumpled and stained with soot, his hands trembling as they gripped hers. Anderson's throat constricted as he stared at her still form. 48 hours. She'd been unconscious for 48 hours, and every second felt like dying. "I hate myself," he whispered, his voice breaking in the silence. He lifted her hand to his lips, pressing a desperate kiss to her knuckles. "God, Cynthia, I hate myself so much." A tear slipped down his cheek, then another, until they were falling freely and he couldn't stop them. "I hate that I couldn't protect you." His shoulders shook with the force of his grief. "That I allowed anyone touch a single strand of your hair." He let out a broken laugh, wiping his face with his free hand. His voice dropped to a raw whisper. "I left you vulnerable. I let you stand alone against Cole Kingsley when I should have been right there beside you. I should have made it clear to the whole damn world that anyone who touched you would have to go through me first." Anderson pressed his forehead against their joined hands, his whole body trembling. His voice broke completely. "I should have let everyone know you were mine. I should have stood beside you at that press conference. I should have made them afraid to even look at you. But I didn't. And now—" He couldn't finish. The sob that tore from his chest was raw and anguished. The machines beeped steadily, indifferently. Anderson laid his head on the edge of her bed, still gripping her hand like a lifeline, and wept like his world was ending. Because without her, it was. This story started 5 months earlier with a call. Engine 47, structure fire at 1847 Riverside Industrial Park. Possible entrapment. Multiple 911 calls reporting children inside. Cynthia Reynolds checked her gear with practiced efficiency as the truck screamed through Chicago's pre-dawn streets. Beside her, Peter was already reviewing the building layout on his tablet. "That's the old textile warehouse," he shouted over the sirens. "Supposed to be condemned." "Squatters," Cynthia said grimly. "Probably families with nowhere else to go." The warehouse was fully engulfed when they arrived, flames shooting from broken windows and black smoke billowing into the sky. But the screams coming from inside made Cynthia's blood run cold. "Reynolds, Peter. Search and rescue, east entrance." Captain Morrison barked. "We've got reports of at least 3 children and 2 adults." Cynthia was already moving, her training overriding the fear that tried to creep in. Into the smoke, through the heat, her thermal camera scanning desperately for life signs. There, huddled in a corner, a woman shielding 3 small children with her body. "CFD. I've got you," Cynthia called out, moving toward them through the flames. 27 minutes later, she emerged from the burning building carrying a 4-year-old girl, her partner right behind her with the other 2 children. The mother stumbled out on her own, coughing but alive. The crowd that had gathered erupted in applause, news cameras flashing in the early morning light. But Cynthia barely noticed. She was too busy checking the little girl for injuries, murmuring reassurances as paramedics rushed over. "You're okay, sweetheart. You're safe now. I've got you." From across the scene, standing apart from the chaos in a 3-piece suit that had no business being at a fire at 5 a.m., Anderson Pierce felt his entire world shift on its axis. He'd come to inspect the damage personally. This was the 4th suspicious fire in the Riverside district in 2 months, and his investigation firm had been hired by the insurance companies to find out why. He'd been building a case, following leads, tracking money trails. But the moment he saw her, This fierce, beautiful woman with her protective gear covered in soot, her dark skin glowing in the firelight, her eyes full of such fierce compassion as she held that child. Everything else ceased to exist. She was magnificent, powerful, utterly fearless, and he was completely, irrevocably lost. "Sir, do you want me to approach the fire marshal?" his assistant, David, asked from beside him. Anderson couldn't look away from her. "Who is she?" "Who?" "The firefighter. The one who brought out the little girl." David followed his gaze. "I can find out." "Do that." It took less than 20 minutes for David to come back with a full report. Cynthia Reynolds, 29 years old. 5 years with Chicago Fire, 3 years with Engine 47. Top of her class at the Fire Academy. Currently pursuing her fire investigation certification. Known for... David paused, reading from his tablet with a slight smirk. Quote, "having a hero complex and being annoyingly good at her job." Anderson's lips twitched despite himself. "Is she single?" David's eyebrows rose. "Sir, is she single?" According to social media, yes. No relationship status posted. No romantic photos. But, sir, I should mention. He scrolled down on his tablet. She gave an interview to Chicago Tribune last year. Made some pretty strong statements about billionaires and inequality. There's a quote here, "I'd rather die single than date some out-of-touch billionaire who thinks money solves everything. Give me a real man who understands real problems." Something in Anderson's chest constricted painfully. Of course she would hate everything he represented. "Thank you, David. That will be all." As his assistant walked away, Anderson looked back at Cynthia. She was kneeling beside the ambulance now, still talking to the little girl, making her laugh despite the trauma. The mother was hugging her, crying tears of gratitude. Anderson knew he should walk away, knew this was a losing battle before it even began. Instead, he found himself walking toward the fire marshal's staging area, where he knew she'd have to come eventually to give her report. Their first actual conversation happened 3 hours later, after Cynthia had filed her report and was grabbing coffee from the food truck that always showed up at major fire scenes. "Reynolds?" She turned to find a tall white man in an impeccable suit approaching her. Even exhausted and covered in soot, she clocked him immediately. Expensive watch, designer shoes, that particular air of wealth and authority that set her teeth on edge. "That's me. Can I help you?" Anderson Pierce. He extended his hand. "I'm the arson investigator hired by the insurance consortium. I'd like to ask you a few questions about what you saw inside." Cynthia shook his hand briefly, ignoring the strange jolt of electricity that shot up her arm. "Fire marshal already took my statement. I'm aware. I'm conducting a parallel investigation." "Private investigator?" Her tone cooled several degrees. "Let me guess. You're here to find reasons not to pay out the claims." "I'm here to find out why 4 buildings in this district have burned down in 2 months, Anderson said evenly, though something in her dismissive tone stung more than it should have. All of them were housing vulnerable populations. All of them had recently been purchased by the same development company. That got her attention. "Cole Kingsley. You know him?" "Everyone in this neighborhood knows him. He's been buying up properties for months, harassing tenants, trying to push people out." Her eyes narrowed. "You really investigating him, or are you here to help him cover it up?" Anderson's jaw tightened. "I don't help criminals, Miss Reynolds. I expose them." "Sure you do. For the right price. My fee is irrelevant to the quality of my work. Everything's about money to people like you. People like me?" His voice remained calm, but there was an edge to it now. "Billionaires. Private investigators who charge more per hour than most people make in a week. People who swoop in wearing $1,000 suits to disaster scenes and pretend to care about the victims. Anderson took a slow breath, reminding himself that she didn't know him. That her anger came from a place of righteousness, not malice. I care about the truth, Miss Reynolds. And right now, the truth is that someone is burning down buildings with people inside them. If you'd rather debate the ethics of capitalism than help me stop them, that's your choice. But I'm going to do my job either way. For a moment, they just stared at each other, the tension crackling between them like live wires. Cynthia broke first, pulling out her phone. Fine. I'll send you my observations. But I'm also pursuing my fire investigation certification. And I'm looking into these fires myself. So stay out of my way. Anderson's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his blue eyes. I look forward to working with you, Miss Reynolds. We're not working together. Then I look forward to crossing paths with you. He handed her his business card. Call me if you find anything. Or if you need anything. I won't need anything from you. Nevertheless, he held her gaze for a moment longer than necessary. Be careful, Ms. Reynolds. If Marcus Kingsley is behind these fires, he won't take kindly to people investigating him. I can take care of myself. I don't doubt that. His voice softened almost imperceptibly. But even heroes need backup sometimes. Then he turned and walked away, leaving Cynthia staring after him with a confusion she refused to examine too closely. Over the next 2 months, Cynthia and Anderson kept running into each other. At fire scenes. At city planning meetings. At the courthouse, where property records were kept. At the coffee shop near the fire station, where Cynthia studied for her certification exam. Their arguments became legendary among the firefighters and investigators who knew them. That's not how fire patterns work, Pierce. I've been doing this for 15 years, Reynolds. I think I know. 15 years of working for insurance companies who want to deny claims. I've been inside these buildings. I've seen what accelerants do to structure. This was deliberately set. I never said it wasn't. I'm agreeing with you. Then why are you arguing with me? Because you started yelling first. Captain Morrison would just shake his head and walk away whenever he heard them going at it. But the thing was, beneath the arguments, they were actually on the same side. Anderson's investigation was meticulous. Brilliant even. He found connections Cynthia had missed, traced money through shell companies, uncovered code violations that had been deliberately overlooked. And Cynthia's instincts were impeccable. She could read a fire scene like others read books, seeing exactly how the flames had spread, where they'd started, what had fed them. Separately, they were good at their jobs. Together, whether they admitted it or not, they were unstoppable. Found another one, Anderson said one afternoon, appearing at Cynthia's table in the coffee shop. Without asking permission, he sat down across from her and slid a folder over. Building at 2847 Riverside. Same owner. Same pattern of harassment. Fire inspectors signed off on the electrical, despite it being completely out of code. Cynthia opened the folder, scanning the documents. That's the third inspector who signed off on Kingsley's buildings. Fourth. There was one in 2019. He's paying them off. Undoubtedly. But proving it is another matter. Anderson leaned back in his chair, studying her. You look tired. I'm fine. When's the last time you slept? None of your business, Pierce. You're running yourself into the ground, Reynolds. Between your fire shifts, the investigation, and studying for your certification. I said, I'm fine. She slammed the folder shut, eyes flashing. I don't need you checking up on me like I'm some fragile thing that needs protecting. Anderson held her gaze steadily. I'm not checking up on you. I'm worried about you. There's a difference. The sincerity in his voice caught her off guard. For a moment, she didn't know what to say. Why do you even care? She finally asked, her voice quieter. Because I'm in love with you, Anderson thought. Because I think about you every waking moment. Because the sight of you in danger makes me want to tear down the world to keep you safe. Because we're working the same case, he said instead. And because you're a good investigator, I'd rather not lose a valuable asset. Something flickered across Cynthia's face. Disappointment, maybe? But she covered it quickly. Right. Professional courtesy. Exactly. But when she wasn't looking, Anderson slipped an envelope under her notebook. Inside was a gift card to the coffee shop, $500 worth, and a simple note for all the late-night study sessions. You shouldn't have to choose between coffee and rent. Cynthia found it later that night. She told herself she was angry. Told herself she didn't need his charity. But she kept the card. And she used it. Everything changed the day Cynthia called a press conference. She'd been gathering evidence for months, building an airtight case against Cole Kingsley. Code violations, bribed inspectors, harassment complaints, suspicious insurance claims. And finally, she'd found it. The smoking gun. Financial records showing Kingsley had taken out massive insurance policies on every building just weeks before they burned. She couldn't wait for the official investigation anymore. People were dying. Families were being displaced. Kingsley was getting richer off their suffering. So she went public. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming, Cynthia said, standing at a podium outside City Hall, a folder of evidence in her hands. My name is Cynthia Reynolds, firefighter with Engine 47 and certified fire investigator. For the past 4 months, I've been investigating a series of suspicious fires in the Riverside district. Today, I'm presenting evidence that these fires were deliberately set by developer Cole Kingsley as part of an insurance fraud and property development scheme. The crowd of reporters erupted with questions, cameras flashing. Cynthia laid it all out. Every detail, every connection, every piece of evidence she'd gathered. It was damning, conclusive, undeniable. In his downtown office, Anderson watched the press conference on his computer screen, his heart in his throat. No, he whispered. Cynthia, no. What are you doing? His phone rang. David. Sir, are you watching? I'm watching. Get the car. Now. Where are we? City Hall. And call my legal team. Tell them I need a threat assessment on Cole Riverside within the hour. Pull everything. His associates, his history, anyone he's ever had conflict with and what happened to them. Because Anderson knew something Cynthia clearly didn't. Cole Riverside didn't just bribe inspectors and commit insurance fraud. He eliminated threats. Anderson had already uncovered 3 suspicious deaths connected to Cole. A journalist who'd been investigating him, found dead in an apparent suicide. A former business partner, killed in a hit and run. A city councilman who'd opposed his developments, died of a sudden heart attack, despite being 42 and healthy. And now Cynthia had just painted a target on her own back. Anderson was out of the car before it fully stopped at City Hall, pushing through the crowd of reporters. Cynthia was just finishing up, looking fierce and righteous, and so goddamn brave it made his chest ache. Reynolds. She turned, surprise flashing across her face when she saw him. Pierce? What are you? We need to talk. Now. I'm kind of in the middle of... Now, Cynthia. The use of her first name and the urgency in his voice got through to her. She excused herself and followed him to a quiet corner of the building's lobby. What the hell were you thinking? Anderson demanded, his fear coming out as anger. I was thinking that someone needed to expose that bastard. By making yourself a target? Do you have any idea how dangerous Cole is? I can handle. 3 people who threatened Cole's business interests are dead, Cynthia. Dead. And you just went on live television accusing him of multiple felonies? The color drained from her face. What? Anderson pulled out his phone, showing her the report David had sent. A journalist, a business partner, a city councilman, all dead within months of opposing Cole. All ruled accidents or natural causes, but the pattern is clear. Cynthia stared at the information, her hands starting to shake. I didn't know. I know you didn't. Anderson's voice softened. That's why I'm here. I'm going to assign you a security detail. I don't need. Yes, you do. And for once in your stubborn life, please just let someone help you. Their eyes met, and for a moment, the antagonism that always crackled between them shifted into something else, something charged and intense and terrifying. Why do you care so much? Cynthia asked quietly. And don't give me that professional courtesy bullshit again. Their eyes met, and for a moment, the antagonism that always crackled between them shifted into something else, something charged and intense and terrifying. Why do you care so much? Cynthia asked quietly. And don't give me that professional courtesy bullshit again. Anderson's jaw worked. He wanted to tell her. God, he wanted to tell her everything. That he'd been half in love with her since that first fire, that every argument they had just made him fall deeper, that the thought of her in danger made him physically ill. But her words from that interview echoed in his head. I'd rather die single than date some out-of-touch billionaire. Because you're a good person doing good work, he said instead. And the world needs more of that. More of you. Before she could respond, both their phones buzzed simultaneously. Anderson looked at his screen and felt his blood run cold. What? Cynthia asked, seeing his expression. There's a fire. Riverside District. I need to get to the station. Cynthia. His voice stopped her. It's at 847 Riverside. The address meant nothing to her for a moment. Then her eyes widened. That's the building where those families relocated. The ones from the first fire. I know. Anderson's grip tightened on his phone. This is retaliation. Cole's sending you a message. Then I'm going. Those people are there because of me. Cynthia. But she was already running toward the exit, pulling out her phone to call the station. Anderson followed, his heart pounding with a dread he couldn't shake. Something was very, very wrong. By the time Cynthia's truck reached 847 Riverside, the building was fully engulfed. But something about this fire felt different. Wrong. Cap, this doesn't look right, she said into her radio as they geared up. What do you mean? The burn pattern. It's too fast, too hot. This isn't a normal structure fire. Chemical accelerant? Maybe, but it's more than that. The flames are... An explosion rocked the building's west side, sending debris flying. Everyone back, Morrison shouted. This building's not stable. But over the roar of the flames, Cynthia heard it. A child screaming. Cap, there's someone inside. Reynolds, no. That building could collapse any second. But Cynthia was already moving, her training and her conscience overriding common sense. She couldn't let another child die when she could hear them crying for help. She made it to the 3rd floor before she realized her mistake. The fire hadn't spread naturally. It had been deliberately laid out to create a maze, funneling her deeper into the building. The exits she'd counted on were blocked, sealed off with debris that looked strategically placed. And there was no child, just a recording, playing on a loop from a speaker she found mounted on the wall. Oh God, she breathed into her radio. Cap, it's a trap. The building's been rigged. That's when the explosions started. Not one. Not two. a systematic series of controlled detonations designed to collapse the building floor by floor, starting from the bottom. Cynthia ran, her lungs burning from the smoke, her mind racing through every possible exit. But they were all blocked, and the building was coming down around her. She was going to die here. The thought hit her with crystal clarity. This was how it ended. Not saving someone, not being a hero, but falling for the trap of a monster who wanted to silence her. The floor beneath her feet started to give way, and she had just enough time to think, I wish I'd been nicer to Anderson before everything went black. Outside, Anderson arrived just as the building began to collapse. Cynthia. His scream tore from his throat as he watched the third floor cave in. Cynthia. Morrison grabbed him. Sir, you can't. She's in there. Cynthia. We have people. You don't understand. Anderson's voice broke completely. She's in there. I have to. He tore away from Morrison's grip and ran toward the building. Someone stop him, Morrison shouted, but Anderson was already through the perimeter, running straight toward the flames. He had no gear, no protection, no plan beyond getting to her. The heat was overwhelming, the smoke choking, but Anderson kept moving. Up the stairs, through the flames, calling her name over and over like a prayer. Please, God, please let her be alive. I'll do anything. Give anything. Just let her be alive. He found her on what was left of the third floor, trapped under a beam that had fallen across her shoulder and chest. She was unconscious, blood trickling from a cut on her forehead. Cynthia! Baby, no, please? His hands shook as he felt for a pulse. There. Weak, but there. Anderson grabbed the beam, ignoring the way it burned through his expensive suit jacket, and lifted with strength born of pure desperation. It moved just enough for him to pull her free. The building groaned ominously around them. Anderson lifted Cynthia into his arms, cradling her against his chest, and ran. He made it out 30 seconds before the entire structure collapsed behind them, the force of it throwing them both to the ground. Anderson curled his body around hers, protecting her as debris rained down, not caring what hit him as long as she was safe. When the dust settled, Morrison and the paramedics rushed over. Is she? Morrison couldn't finish the question. She's alive, Anderson said hoarsely, still holding her. She's alive. She has to be. The paramedics pried her from his arms gently, laying her on a gurney, checking vitals, calling out medical jargon Anderson couldn't process through the roar of blood in his ears. Sir, you need medical attention too, someone said, trying to guide him away. I'm not leaving her. Sir, I said, I'm not leaving her. They let him ride in the ambulance, let him hold her hand as they raced toward the hospital, let him sit in the corner of the ER while they worked on her. She had a concussion. 2nd-degree burns, broken ribs, smoke inhalation. But she was alive, and Anderson sat in that waiting room, covered in soot and ash, his hands shaking, and broke down completely. That's how David found him 3 hours later. Still in his ruined suit, staring at nothing, tear tracks, cutting through the grime on his face. Sir, I have news. Anderson looked up, his eyes hollow. Is she? She's stable. In a medically induced coma to let the swelling in her brain go down. The doctors say she should make a full recovery. The relief that flooded through Anderson nearly brought him to his knees. And Cole? David's expression turned grim. FBI raided his offices an hour ago. Anonymous tip led them to server room with all the evidence. Financial records, communications with the arsonists, payment records for the bribed officials. Everything. Cole's being investigated as we speak. Anonymous tip, Anderson repeated flatly. I have no idea what you're talking about, sir, David said, his expression carefully neutral. Anderson had been building that case against Cole for months, had been holding on to it, waiting for the right moment, the airtight proof. He'd just given it all to the FBI, anonymously, without credit or recognition, because Cynthia's life was worth more than his professional reputation. Can I see her? Family only, they said. Anderson stood, his voice leaving no room for argument. Then tell them I'm her fiancé. David's eyebrows shot up. Sir, you heard me. For 2 days, Anderson sat by Cynthia's bedside, holding her hand, talking to her, begging her to wake up. He told her everything he'd been too scared to say when she was awake. About the first moment he saw her, about every deliberately engineered coincidence, about how her voice was the first thing he heard in his head when he woke up and the last thing he wanted to hear before he slept. I know you think I'm everything you hate, he whispered on the second night, exhausted and raw. I know you said you'd rather die single than be with someone like me. And God, Cynthia, if that's still true when you wake up, I'll accept it. I'll walk away. I'll stay out of your life. He pressed his lips to her knuckles. But I need you to wake up first. I need to hear you tell me to leave with your own voice. Because I can't. I can't give up on you without hearing you say the words. Her hand twitched in his. Anderson's head snapped up. Cynthia? Another twitch. Then her fingers curled weakly around his. Doctor. Anderson lunged for the call button. She's waking up. The room flooded with medical staff, and Anderson was pushed back, forced to watch from the corner as they checked her vitals, adjusted medications, called out readings. And then, where? Cynthia's voice was barely a rasp. Where am I? St. Mary's Hospital, the doctor said gently. You've been unconscious for 2 days. You were in a building collapse. Do you remember? Cynthia's eyes moved around the room, confused and unfocused, until they landed on Anderson. Everything came back in a rush. The trap, the fire, the building coming down, and Anderson's voice calling her name through the flames. Anderson's arms around her. Anderson's body curled protectively over hers as the world exploded. You, she whispered. You came. Anderson stepped forward, his hand finding hers. Of course I did. Died. Her voice was barely there, each word an effort. I wasn't going to let you die alone. A tear slipped from the corner of her eye. Anderson. Shh. Don't talk. You need to rest. He squeezed her hand gently, his thumb stroking over her knuckles. I'm just so glad you're awake. She held his gaze for a long moment, something unspoken passing between them. Then her eyes drifted closed again, exhaustion pulling her under. Sleep, Cynthia, Anderson whispered, bringing her hand to his lips. I'll be right here when you wake up. Over the next 3 days, Cynthia drifted in and out of consciousness. Sometimes, she'd wake to find Anderson reading quietly in the chair beside her bed. Sometimes she'd wake to find him asleep, his hand still holding hers. Sometimes she'd wake to find him gone, but there was always fresh flowers on her bedside table and a note in his elegant handwriting. Had to handle some business. Back soon. You snored a little. It was adorable. Don't tell anyone I said that. The nurses say you're healing beautifully. I already knew that. On the 4th day, she was finally alert enough for a real conversation. You look terrible, she said when he walked in that morning, noting the dark circles under his eyes and the wrinkled state of what was clearly a fresh suit. And you look beautiful. Anderson set down the coffee he'd brought and moved to her bedside. How are you feeling? Like a building fell on me. She tried to smile, but winced. The doctors say I can probably go home in a few days. That's wonderful. He hesitated, then pulled the chair closer. Cynthia, we need to talk. Her heart sank. She knew what was coming. Had known since she'd first woken up and seen the devastation on his face. Heard the raw emotion in his voice. Anderson, please, let me say this. He took a breath. I meant everything I said when you first woke up. I love you. I'm in love with you. And I know that's probably the last thing you want to hear, given everything you've said about people like me. But I can't. I won't lie to you about it anymore. Cynthia's throat tightened. I know you do. You. No? I've known for a while. She looked down at their joined hands. The way you look at me. The way you always show up. The coffee card, the security detail, running into a burning building. She swallowed hard. I know, Anderson. He went very still. And I care about you too. So much. But not in that way. She smiled sadly. Can you understand that? He was quiet for a long moment, his jaw working. Then he nodded slowly. I can. I like you so much it scares me. Her voice cracked. But liking someone and being able to build a life with them are two different things. And I can't. Anderson brought her hand to his lips, pressing a long kiss to her knuckles. When he pulled back, his eyes were suspiciously bright. Okay, he said softly. Okay. I understand. I'm sorry. Don't be. He smiled, though it didn't reach his eyes. You're being honest. That's one of the things I love about you. You don't tell people what they want to hear. You tell them the truth, even when it's hard. He stood, and for a horrible moment, Cynthia thought he was going to leave and never come back. Instead, he leaned down and pressed a gentle kiss to her forehead. Get some rest, he murmured against her skin. I'll make sure the nurses have everything you need. Then he was gone, and Cynthia was left staring at the ceiling, tears streaming down her face, wondering why doing the right thing felt so much like breaking her own heart. Cynthia was discharged a week later. Her captain insisted on driving her home, fussing over her like a worried father as he helped her up the stairs to her apartment. You need anything, you call. I don't care what time it is, Morrison said, setting her bag down inside her door. The whole station's been worried sick. I'm fine, Cap. Really? Yeah, well, you scared us. He cleared his throat gruffly. That Pierce guy called every day asking about you. Even sent a substantial donation to the station's equipment fund. In your name. Cynthia's chest tightened. He did? Yeah. Wouldn't let us thank him. Just said. Morrison checked his phone, reading from an email. It's what she would want. Make sure it goes toward protecting the people who protect us. She closed her eyes against the sudden sting of tears. He's a good man, Reynolds. Whatever's between you two. Or isn't between you two. He's one of the good ones. After Morrison left, Cynthia hobbled to her couch and turned on the news, needing the distraction. The top story made her freeze. Cole Riverside arrested on multiple charges, including arson, insurance fraud, and conspiracy to commit murder. Cynthia grabbed the remote, turning up the volume. FBI raid this morning resulted in the arrest of prominent developer Cole Riverside. Sources say the evidence against Riverside is overwhelming, including financial records, communications with known arsonists, and evidence linking him to 3 suspicious deaths of individuals who opposed his development projects. The scene cut to footage of Cole being led out of his office in handcuffs, his lawyer shouting no comment to the swarm of reporters. The investigation was reportedly led by private investigator Anderson Pierce, whose firm has been gathering evidence against Riverside for months. Pierce, who declined to comment on camera, has turned over all evidence to federal prosecutors. The camera showed a brief glimpse of Anderson in the background, his face set and determined as he climbed into a black car. Cynthia's hands were shaking as she muted the TV. He'd done it. Even after she'd rejected him, even after she'd pushed him away, he'd brought Cole to justice. Not for recognition, not for glory, but mainly to keep her safe. 2 weeks later, Cynthia stood outside Pierce Innovation's downtown headquarters, her heart pounding. She'd been home from the hospital for 12 days. In that time, she'd watched the case against Cole unfold in the media. But she hadn't seen Anderson once. He'd sent flowers to her apartment with a note, "I'm glad you're back home and safe." He'd sent a care package of her favorite coffee, and the study materials for her advanced fire investigation certification with a note, "Heard you were going for the next level. You'll ace it." He'd sent a donation to her fire station in honor of her return to work with a note, "Welcome back, hero. The city needs you." But he hadn't come to see her, hadn't called, hadn't asked for anything in return. And Cynthia had finally realized what she'd been too scared to admit before. She was completely, irrevocably in love with him. Not because of his money or his power or his grand gestures, but because of his quiet kindness. The way he saw her, really saw her, as an equal and a partner, not a damsel to be rescued. The way he loved her enough to let her go. Now she stood in the marble lobby of his building, watching executives and employees rush past, and wondered if she'd completely ruined the best thing that had ever happened to her. "Can I help you?" the receptionist asked. "I'm here to see Anderson Pierce. Do you have an appointment?" "No, but I'm sorry. Mr. Pierce doesn't take unscheduled meetings." "Could you just tell him Cynthia Reynolds is here?" The receptionist's eyes widened with recognition. "Oh, Miss Reynolds. Of course. Let me just—" She picked up the phone, speaking her name quietly into it when it dropped. She looked up with an apologetic smile. "I'm sorry." He dropped the call. "Maybe you check back later when he's free." Cynthia nodded, her nerves thrumming. He has no reason to want to see her anymore, she thought. She turned and was about to leave when she heard her name. "Cynthia." Anderson stepped out of the elevator, and his expression carefully neutral. But she saw the way his hands clenched at his sides, the way his chest rose and fell with a deep breath. "Hi." They stared at each other across the lobby for a moment that stretched like eternity. They both started at the same time, then stopped. "You first," Anderson said quietly. Cynthia stood, her legs shaky. "I saw the news. About Cole. He's going away for a long time. The evidence was overwhelming. You did that. Even after She swallowed hard. "Even after I pushed you away. It was the right thing to do. You should still be safe. Even if you're not with me." He nodded once, his jaw tight. "I was wrong," she said, the words tumbling out. "In the hospital, when I said we couldn't work. I was scared and I was protecting myself, and I said things that were true but incomplete." Anderson took a step toward her. "Cynthia, please, let me finish." She closed the distance between them, looking up into those blue eyes that had haunted her dreams for weeks. "You asked me once why I cared so much about what you thought, why your opinion mattered when I claimed to hate everything you represented. I remember. It's because somewhere along the way, between all our arguments and our investigations and our terrible coffee shop meetings, I fell in love with you too." The sound Anderson made was caught between a laugh and a sob. "I fell in love with the way you pretend to be cold and calculating, but you're actually the kindest person I know." Tears were streaming down her face now, but she didn't care. "I fell in love with the way you see me, as someone worth standing beside, Cynthia. And I fell in love with the way you loved me enough to let me go, even when it broke your heart. Anderson's hands came up to cup her face, his thumbs wiping away her tears. You broke mine too, he whispered, when you sent me away in that hospital. When you said we couldn't be together. It broke me. I'm so sorry. But you were right to push back. He pressed his forehead to hers. You showed me what it means to really care about something beyond myself. I love you, Cynthia breathed. I love you so much, and I'm so sorry it took me so long to be brave enough to say it. Say it again, Anderson whispered against her lips. I love you. Again. I love you, Anderson Pierce. He kissed her then, deep and desperate and full of all the longing they'd both been holding back for months. Cynthia melted into him, her arms wrapping around his neck, kissing him back with everything she had. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Anderson was smiling. Really smiling, in a way she'd never seen before. I love you too, he said. In case that wasn't clear from the months of pining and the dramatic building rescue. Cynthia laughed, the sound watery but genuine. It was a pretty good clue. Just good? I was going for spectacular. Okay, it was spectacular. She pulled him down for another kiss, softer this time. But just so we're clear, I'm not giving up my apartment, my job, or my independence. I wouldn't dream of asking you to. 6 months later, the courtroom was packed for the sentencing hearing. Cole Riverside sat at the defendant's table, his expensive suit doing nothing to hide the defeat in his posture. Cynthia sat in the gallery, Anderson's hand clasped firmly in hers. The defendant will rise, the judge said. Cole stood, his lawyer beside him. Cole Riverside, you have been found guilty on all counts. Arson, insurance fraud, conspiracy to commit murder, and attempted murder. The evidence against you was overwhelming and irrefutable. Your actions endangered countless lives, destroyed homes and livelihoods, and resulted in the traumatic injury of a firefighter who was simply doing her job. This court finds your actions reprehensible and deserving of the maximum penalty. Cynthia felt Anderson's grip tighten on her hand. I hereby sentence you to 45 years in federal prison, without the possibility of parole for 25 years. In addition, you will pay restitution to all victims of your schemes, totaling approximately $12 million. Court is adjourned. The gavel fell. As Cole was led away in handcuffs, he glanced back at Cynthia. She met his gaze steadily, unflinching. She'd won. They'd won. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed them, but Anderson's security team kept them at a respectful distance. Miss Reynolds, how does it feel to see justice served? It feels like the system worked the way it's supposed to, Cynthia said into the microphones. Cole thought he could prey on vulnerable people without consequences. Today proved him wrong. And Mr. Pierce, your investigation was instrumental in this conviction. What's next for you? Anderson glanced at Cynthia with a smile. I'm going to take my girlfriend to dinner. And then I'm going to keep doing what I do, using my resources to expose people who abuse their power. Miss Reynolds, are you planning to return to active duty? Absolutely. The Chicago Fire Department is my home. I'll be back on Engine 47 next month. As they walked toward Anderson's car, Cynthia leaned into him. 45 years. He's going to die in prison. Good, Anderson said simply. He deserves every second of it for hurting you. Thank you, she said softly. For everything. For believing me. For building the case. For loving you? Anderson finished, opening the car door for her. That's not something you need to thank me for. That's just who I am now. Who you made me. Cynthia reached up and kissed him, soft and sweet. I love you too. Even when you're being ridiculously romantic. especially when I'm being ridiculously romantic. Don't push it, Pierce. As they drove away from the courthouse, the Chicago skyline stretching out before them, Cynthia felt something settle in her chest. Peace, justice, love.